Well, hi everyone, Corey Barker here, and welcome to Master Effects Training. Now, first off, I want to thank you for signing up. I am extremely excited about this new 3D course. It is really going to change the game on how you can take advantage of both Photoshop and Dimension and achieve results you never could before. And it's a lot of fun and surprisingly not as difficult as you might think. So having said that, what I want to do here is show you a little demo. I've got a quick little demo I put together on how the workflow basically works between these two programs and how you can achieve some really interesting results you just never could do before. So we are going to go through the process. This isn't a fully detailed tutorial. I'm just kind of going through the process here just to kind of demonstrate how it works. We're going to get much more in depth in the course when it rolls out. So I hope you definitely check that out when it does. But for now, I hope you enjoy this little demo on seeing how you can achieve really impressive results in a fraction of the time using both Photoshop and Dimension. So I'm going to start with, I've got this cloud image. It's going to be ultimately the background for our final scene here. So it's got a really nice dramatic look to it. So I just need that. That's the only photo I'm going to need for this. So we're going to go here and start in Photoshop, and let's create a new document. And I'm just going to go and make it 1500 pixels wide by 1125 pixels tall. Click OK. There we go. And I'm going to go ahead and set a text layer here. So I'm going to grab my text tool, and let's just go ahead and set some text. And I'm just going to type out Master FX. Now this font I'm using, it's a really cool font I found on dafont.com called Batashi, as you can see here in the options bar. Again, dafont.com, D-A-F-O-N-T. There's a lot of really cool stylized fonts that you can play around with on that site. Some really, really cool stuff. So basically, really check it out. So I'm just adjusting some formatting here on the text, and I think that all looks good. I'm going to go ahead and center up the text in the document. There we go. Maybe scale it up just a hair more, not too much, but there we go. All right, so now I want to go ahead and convert this text to 3D. So we're just going to simply go to the 3D menu, go to New 3D Extrusion from Selected Layer. Going to go ahead and extrude that text. Let's bring out our 3D panel and the Properties panel. Going to bring that extrusion down quite a bit. Let's actually grab our camera, rotate here a little bit. You can see that extrusion is very deep. So let's go ahead and bring that down to about 20. Maybe that's, let's go a little bit less. Let's do like 10 pixels. There we go. And we'll hit my default camera. Now, also, I want to inflate the front and back of this text so it has more surface area to give off light, because ultimately it's going to be illuminated in the final scene. So I'm going to go ahead in that 3D panel, select the main text 3D object, and then over in the Properties panel, I'm going to go to my Cap section, third tab at the top here. And then we're just going to set the sides menu to front and back. Down here in the inflate properties, let's go ahead and set the strength. And let's do like 7. There we go. You can see it inflated the front face there. And if we rotate our camera view, we should see the back face there as well. So that looks pretty good. And we'll hit default camera. And I think I'm going to adjust the angle a little bit higher. I'll bring it up to about 55, and that looks good. All right. So that is it as far as Photoshop 3D. Now we need to just go ahead and export it so that we can bring it into Dimension. Now the first thing is, let's of course save our working document right now. So we'll just call this Master FX Text. Let's go ahead and save that to the desktop. There we go. So now with that 3D layer selected, we're going to now go to the 3D menu and choose Export 3D Layer. Here we're going to choose the format. We want to do it in an OBJ file. We'll leave all those elements there and click OK. On the desktop, I'm going to create a new folder. Let's call this Master Scene 3D. And inside of there, we'll go ahead and save this object, which is Master FX Text, OBJ. Click Save. There we go. And I'm going to go ahead and close this document and save it. So there we have it. All right, so now we have two versions of our text right now. We have the PSD file that contains the 3D layer, and now we have this folder that contains the OBJ file, which is what we're going to be able to import into Dimension. So let's go ahead and launch that. And once it's open. Now, understand, I'm just kind of going through a demo here. I'm not going at a certain pace, so I will be getting into the intricacies of Dimension in the actual course. I actually have a kind of a crash course on Dimension. It's going to be part of the Design Effects series, so we'll get more in depth in that. So here I'm just going to create new and go ahead and change the dimensions of my document here. So let's go ahead and set the canvas size to 1500. Same as our original Photoshop document, so 1125 on that. And then we'll just center that scene there. There we go. Now, I don't want the background to be black, so I'm actually going to select environment, and let's go to the background here and change that. And I'm going to go ahead and bring in my text element as part of the scene here. So I'm going to press Command or Control I, and then on my desktop here, we're going to go to the master scene. We're going to locate our OBJ file there. There it is. Click Open. Now, sometimes, depending on how big you created it in Photoshop, can show up a little differently inside of here. So if I just kind of scroll out here, there you can see the object came in rather large and a little bit off center. So let's just nudge this up and center it there. And I'm going to press S to activate scale. Let's just bring that down right about 30% for now. And let's go ahead and zoom back in here. There we go. So there is our text in the scene. Now I'm going to add a simple primitive shape that's going to be the surface that our text is going to be sitting on. So I'm going to jump into my starter assets here inside Dimension. We're going to locate this plane primitive object right here. Let's drag that into the scene. Press S, and let's go ahead and scale it up quite a bit. So it looks like it's sitting on the surface there. There we go. Now, one thing I like to do when I've got all my key elements in place here inside Dimension is go ahead and do a save. And we'll just call this main working scene. Save it into the same folder. There we go. So now we've got all the elements in place. I'm going to just move back out here a little bit. And first thing I want to do is apply a texture to this plane that the object is sitting on. Now, there are a lot of materials that are available inside of Dimension by default that are part of the preset package. There's also a lot of them available on Adobe stock. A handful of them are free, but a lot of them are paid as well. And there's a lot of really great ones, and we're going to be using quite a few of them, especially a lot of the free ones throughout the Design Effects series. We'll also be creating a lot of our own as well. But in this case, I actually have one I downloaded from Adobe stock. It's called Dark Gravel. It's actually got a long name here. If we hover over it, Dark Gravel in a Wet Parking Lot. Okay. So I'm just going to click on that and apply it to that plane. And you'll see it's just kind of this wet gravel kind of look. And if I just move the camera around, you'll see that it's got a very realistic reflection on there with some elements underneath the water and some elements above it, giving you a really, really realistic texture there. Now, I want to change a couple of things here first. The first thing is the base color of the gravel. I don't want to have it in its natural color. It's going to be in a very darker, much darker scene. So over in the properties here, I'm going to go to that base color setting, and let's just click on the image icon. And I'm going to click on the edit pencil right here, and that's going to open up that texture in Photoshop. You can see right there. And all I'm going to do here is simply desaturate the image. I'm just going to press Shift-Command-U, removes the color. That's all I'm going to do. I'm going to close that and save the changes, and it's going to update it right back here in Dimension, there you can see. So there is that. Now, want to position everything in place pretty much for the final shot. Now, the first thing is I don't want that background to be that bright. The environmental light that's applied, and we want to dial that down quite a bit. So we're actually going to go in here into the environment, go down to the environment light, and here we're actually going to change this to that cloud sky that we saw, that I showed you earlier. So I'm going to click on the image here, and let's go into the folder. And we're going to locate on our desktop that cloud sky. There it is. And we'll go ahead and click Open. It's going to go ahead and create a radial image and wrap it around the scene. And there you can see that cloud sky is now reflecting in our scene there. Very cool. So now we're going to apply an illumination property to the text itself. I'm going to select the main text here in the scene panel, and then we're going to go back into my starter assets, and we're going to go to the materials, and we're just going to click on this glowing material right here. This is part of Dimension, so you should have it right in there. And you can see it kind of get this bright white effect on it. Now I'm going to go in here, and I'm actually going to change that color. I don't want my light to be white, but rather I'm going to make it kind of a yellowish, kind of a darker gold yellow color there, something like that. And it's way too bright as well. So I'm going to go down to the glow property here, and let's dial that down to about 50. Now to get an idea of how this is looking in our final scene, we can click on this little render preview, and in a moment we're going to get a little bit of a render and see how this looks. So we can see that's not looking too bad, but that background is still way too bright. So let's go back to that environment property and dial the intensity down, way down. Let's go down to about 30. So that's looking good. If I make full screen this render preview here, you can see what's going on here is that we're getting a very realistic reflection on that surface, and that text is illuminating the area around it and giving us that result there. But we need to make a couple of more adjustments here, so I'm going to close that for the moment. Let's go back to that plane, and I'm going to dial that down, and you'll see the gravel property here. I actually want to change the position of the texture itself. So if notice I'm not moving the plane itself in the 3D scene, but rather the texture that has been applied to the scene. So let's just kind of rotate that around there. And I want to have a little bit of the surface that is above the scene to be reflecting, to be right under the text there, so it can pick up some of the light there. So let's just dial this back a little. Now notice I'm using the scrubby slider here as I'm moving these textures around. Let's just kind of move that back there. There we go. And once again, let's see what we've got going on here. So I'm going to change my angle of view here. Let's just get a little bit more dramatic angle there. And this is where it just gets fun, because you're staging the elements now and seeing how they best fit the overall scene here. So let's just kind of dial this over. This is where I get particularly picky myself. There we go. I think I like that. Let's dial this back. So I like that large patch there. That looks good. All right. Now I'm just adjusting my camera angle here a little bit more. Notice I'm just dialing the offset, just getting this angle just right. And I think I'm going to go in there. Now you can actually edit the individual 3D elements even after you got them inside a dimension here. So I'm actually going to dial the scaling of that text down a little bit, and let's bring it forward just a little bit more. And let's see how that looks in the scene there. Now I'm not adding the background image here inside of Dimension. I'm going to do that in Photoshop in the other overall final scene there. And I think that's looking pretty good. So I'm going to close that and just tweak that camera position there. See, this is a great thing about it, is that you can move these elements around, or move your camera view around, so you can see exactly how things are being placed in the scene there. I could clearly mess with this all day, but this is just a little quick demo. All right, so I am actually going to go ahead and render this out. This is pretty much it. So I'm going to go to the Render tab here. And I'm going to go ahead and set name of the file. I'm going to actually do this at a medium quality. It doesn't need to be super high res. It just needs to be enough to show you how cool this is. And I'm going to go ahead and set to render. So that is going to go ahead and run through the render, and we're going to jump ahead to it being finished, and we're going to finish it up in Photoshop. So let's take a look at that. All right, so after tweaking just a couple more things, I went ahead and let the render run through, and it took about 20-25 minutes, and that was just at the medium setting. And I'm on the MacBook Pro here, so you can see the render times are reasonable. Of course, when you go into the higher quality, you're going to have to tack on more time to that, but the result you can see is quite impressive. And now we are back in Photoshop. I opened up the PSD that was saved out of Dimension. It automatically saved it out once it finished the render. So I've got it open up in here, and what you'll notice, in addition to the rendered image, which you see has a transparent background here because we didn't add a background image in Dimension. We're going to do that here in Photoshop. But it also has these other layers that allow you to make selections of specific parts of the image. In this case, we want to make a selection of just the text itself, the yellow text right here. So we're going to use this layer, the object selection layer. So let's go ahead and turn those on. And I'm just going to simply use my magic wand tool and select that image. Make sure you have contiguous unchecked so it selects everything that's the same color there. And then we'll go ahead and turn that off. And I'm going to select the rendered layer, and we're going to press Command or Control J, and that's going to put that on a new layer there, as you can see right there. So now what I want to do, let's go ahead and bring up the sky image, the one we started with in the beginning, or the one I mentioned in the beginning, and let's go ahead and bring this into the working file here. So let's go ahead and bring that, and I'm going to go ahead and scale it to fit in the scene here, and let's go ahead and flip it horizontally perhaps. There we go. And we're just going to get some positioning here so it looks like maybe I will have to go. Yeah, let's do that. Yeah, that's matching the scene better. So no, we want to obviously eyeball it compared to the surface reflection there. So I think that looks pretty good right there. Now I'm going to put a layer mask on that layer. Let's just give it a little bit of a fade here at the bottom, right there where the horizon is. Now I'm also going to do the same thing to the rendered layer. I'm going to put a layer mask on that and just fade it at the bottom, or right at the top there, so it goes off into the horizon. Notice it did not affect the text, and that's because we've got it on its own layer, as you can see right there. So that's why that's working there. Now I'm going to select that cloud layer. Let's darken it up a little bit of a levels adjustment here, and get that darker part of it. I don't want that really light part in the image here, so let's just unlink the layer mask and then nudge that up a little bit, and there we go. There we go. That's much better. All right, so back on the text here, I'm going to make a duplicate of that layer, and I'm going to add a simple outer glow layer style here. I'm just going to do a same color yellow. We're just going to do a bit of a hard light, little glow here. I think that looks good. And then I'm also going to put a little bit of a blur on this layer to blur the edges so we get a little bit more glow on that. Let's put that around 4, I think. And I'm going to activate a selection of that text, and let's just go select inverse. I'm going to hit delete a couple of times just to kind of narrow that out. And then I'm going to lock the transparency and just fill that layer with white, and then change the blend mode to overlay. And that's going to help give me a little bit more illuminated feel coming from inside the text there. So it makes a huge difference there, as you can see right there. Now I'm going to add one more layer. And I'm going to sample this bright yellow in the text and just add a little bit of a gradient here. And I'm going to do this as a radial gradient, foreground to transparent. Let's do it right there. Maybe not so bright yellow, something like that. I'm just going to drag out a gradient there, and then I'm just going to scale and transform it. And this is just going to be an enhanced glow on the ground, on that the part that's not in the water there. It's just going to be more of a glow coming off the front face of that text here. So I'll scale that out, and I'm going to change that blend mode to overlay, and we can see that that's giving me a little bit more illumination on that surface. And lastly, let's put a little bit of an adjustment layer on here. Add a little bit more contrast in the overall scene there. And just to darken up the sky, I'm actually going to go and put a new layer above the sky, or above the clouds, and sample that dark blue. And let's just add a gradient coming in from the top here. And we'll set this to multiply, darken that up quite a bit. Maybe dial down the layer intensity just a little bit there. But we've got an entire scene here created using one photo and a simple text object from Photoshop, and then combining those elements in Dimension, and then doing the finishing in Photoshop. This, again, is just a small taste of the process we're going to be doing in the Design Effects series that's going to be coming out in the next week or so. So, again, thank you for signing up on the list. You're going to be among the first to get the early notice when the course releases. Hope you guys enjoy it. I'm excited about it. I can't wait to get it released and out there and see what you guys do with it. Until then, we'll see you next time right here on Master Effects Training.